Hello, Facebook
Hi.
world. Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good, good. We are here today with Dana, who is from the Well-Oiled Canine, which is you do essential oils with dogs. And so, which I think is very cool. And I have used essential oils in my practice as well. And so I always find it to be so beneficial for animals in order to use that. So maybe you can just share what it is that you do and how did you get into using essential oils with animals?
Yeah. So, hi, everybody. I'm Dana Brigman, and very excited to be here and talk to you all about more about essential oils. I am certified in aromatherapy for animals with a specialty for animals through the Veterinary Medical Aromatherapy Association. I'm also certified in homeopathy and Reiki and a number of other things, including nutrition. But what got me on this path was when I started my dog training business after leaving corporate America, I was getting a ton of really complex behavior issues. And I kept thinking there had to be something more that we could do besides training, because sometimes training wasn't enough, or you'd run into these trainers who just say, you correct the dog, right? And I'm like, there's got to be something more at the core of this. And it led me down this path of learning more about emotional roots and trauma and the things that our dogs are holding on to with emotions. And how do we help them resolve those things? With essential oils, help peel back those layers. And so I've spent the last, gosh, I guess now about 6 years, 6 or 7 years, really specializing in natural wellness through nutrition, essential oils, and homeopathy for our animals.
Um, I think it's just such a mirror image for my own practice, which is
Mhm.
basically how I started. And similarly to you, I actually had a dog that was he was like my very first dog that I did, obedience trials with, and we did tracking, and so we did like a lot of team training and stuff like that during a competition. He was attacked in the ring
Mm.
by the working dog. So they have like this. They call it honors, where your dog is in a downstay in the middle of the ring, and you leave the ring. And then there's
Right.
a working dog in the middle with the judge and another handler. And that dog attacked my dog while I
Oh,
wasn't
man.
there. And so after that, he became very dog aggressive. So it became very difficult. So, like you, that's kind of where I started learning from. It's not just about sits and downs.
No.
That's training your basics. But when you are dealing with dogs with emotional imbalances, you
Mhm.
got to find another route. And so that is also how I got involved into the essential oils and herbs and acupressure and massage therapy and
Awesome.
all those other different things. So
Yeah.
it's always interesting when people have I think people who do what we do always have a story. That's what
Right.
leads us to where we go. So
And for me, just to summarize, if I can, it was knowing that there had to be something more we could be doing. I mean, you can't train away every problem if it's rooted in the cells of the body. You just can't. You can't overcome
right,
it every time. Yeah.
right. Well, let's move through to our current topic. And our topic is really about talking about essential oils and how that applies to skin conditions
Mhm.
and dogs that have, allergies or sensitivities, or they have dermatitis and things
Right.
like that. So I think the one thing that we need to kind of start with is really talking about safe oils versus unsafe oils. Like, for example, your fragrance oils versus your medicinal quality oils. How do people know which oils to buy?
Right. Really good question, and one that I wish more people would really stop and think about and do their research on, because they are not all created equal. If you're buying them honestly at Walmart or Bath and Body Works or TJ Maxx and they're all priced the same, or you're finding a bottle of rose for $20, they're just not going to be great quality. They're just not. And so then you get into this notion of, well, then how do you choose the higher quality essential oils? And it really is about digging in and starting to understand that company and the integrity in which they work with, and the people who will talk to you about the results and testimonies that they are having, their experiences, and starting to understand that. But call the company, get involved, get in some of the groups, and really start to ask some questions about this. But please know that if you look at a bottle of lavender, for example, and it says for aromatic use only, that's a red flag. Lavender is one of the very best skin oils available to us, right? Or if you look at a bottle of rose and it's $20 or even $50, it's probably not real, because it takes many, many, many pounds of petals of rose to create just a small ounce of the product, right?
Right.
And we also learned, and this has been some years back, that even in countries like France, they were actually selling more lavender than their fields produced. So how is that possible if they are not adulterating these oils, if they're not stretching them with some chemical constituent or some other ingredient in that product?
So one of the things that I learned way back when I was working in the human health industry was that it was like 95% of the oils that are manufactured based on fragrant oils, and that there is only about 5% oils that are actually utilized for the medicinal quality of the oil. And so one of the things that I always think about is when you're evaluating, and like you said, to maybe know the company a little bit more, because I think one of the key components is actually the processing. How are they extracting the oil from the plant in order to give it its medicinal qualities? Because you don't want to necessarily, it's not just about fragrance, but you're pulling out the energetics or the life force of the plant that
100%.
that creates these, because every plant has the ability to protect itself. So it has certain constituents in it that help that plant thrive. And when you pull out just little sections or just the fragrance and you don't have the other pieces that support it, then of course, then you're not getting the medicinal qualities of the oil as a whole.
Right.
And so, when we're talking about medicinal qualities, you were mentioning about, not necessarily, we are not veterinarians, or what is it that you were, I'll let you.
Well, the disclaimer is I cannot diagnose, treat, or cure. As you know, that's not what we claim to do. We tend to talk about supporting systems of the body and giving the body those energetics and those resources that it needs to help do its best work from the inside out.
Yeah.
And so you talk about energetics. That is a big deal to me. There is at least one company that I know of that I witnessed firsthand some real nonsense. And it's like, okay, I can't recommend you. I can't do that. And
Yeah.
so
And so how do oils actually work? So explain like the process. So, let's say, for example, there are a couple of manufacturers that are out there that do provide a quality oil that can be utilized for the medicinal purpose of helping to support whatever it is that you're working with at that given time. And this in this case, we're talking about skin conditions. But how exactly do oils work within the body?
Well, let me back up for 1 second. You mentioned the plant has the ability to protect itself. If we think of gardens and where things grow, plants in those environments also have the ability to protect other plants, to help that environment or that soil, or things of that nature. And it's done with the constituents of those plants. And so having somebody that understands how things grow, how to maximize their growth naturally, how to and when to, the timing of when you extract an oil out of plant material and get it into the bottling cycle, all of that matters, right? So we know that when we get an authentic brand of essential oil, that it's pure, that its constituents are nothing but the plant matter from the soil in which it was grown. And so those oils then move into the body and work at the cellular level. They can help clear. So we could get into a whole chemistry discussion about this, but I won't.
Just a short intake.
There are different types of constituents. And some are said to go in and clear receptor sites. Some are said to rewrite the cellular level data that the body needs, so that it can help heal. And it gets in there and it does the work to help those cells perform at their optimal means of performance.
Exactly. And so, one of the things they talk about, I know, like the difference between like essential oils versus tinctures and herbs and things of that nature, are the size of the molecule and how the molecule enters into the body. And so one of the things I think that the essential oils generally talk about is how it actually breaks through the blood-brain barrier versus some of the other oils, which have larger molecules, which are unable to do that, which in a sense creates essential oils to be so unique.
Yeah, so essential oils can cross that blood-brain barrier. And when we talk about the variance in molecule size, that's why, for example, when we add a coconut oil to a lavender and apply topically to the skin, it slows down the absorption rate, because now the skin has to fight which molecules going in first, right? So that is a dilution of sorts, but basically it's a layer that helps slow down the absorption rate and moves that into the skin and into the bloodstream.
So let's talk about like essential oils and how they apply from a skin and like certain skin conditions. So, and if anybody has any questions, you can certainly give us a little comment. If you are struggling or anything, we're not here to necessarily, again, give medical advice or anything like that, but possibly we could help, with some answering of some questions. But when it comes down to different skin, because I think you have dogs that have like the flakiness, the dermatitis, they have hot spots, they can have I have dogs that have had like those little blackhead pimples. I've had dogs that have been on medication, and the medication actually calcified in the skin and created like these calcium deposits. And so, I mean, there's all kinds of different things that obviously the skin is our protective barrier. But for dogs that have allergies and or sensitivities, they tend to probably notice their dog scratching and itching, biting and chewing and things of that nature. And so those are usually kind of some of the skin, more common skin issues that are out there.
Yeah, so that's one of the most common calls that I get is my dog is going to gnaw himself to death, right? Or he's red hot and inflamed. And there's a couple of ways to approach that, but one of the things again is start with your food, get that right, detox your home from all the things that can cause any sort of skin irritation, whether that be your laundry soap, your plug-ins, your fabric sprays, even the lotions and potions that we put on our body that our dog is then absorbed to or exposed to rather. So then we move into this soothing element, right? While the body's healing, what can we do to soothe the body? And my go-tos in this are typically lavender, copaiba, frankincense, and tea tree. And I'll do one of a couple of methods of application depending on what we're up against. If I can't touch that skin, I'm going to most likely make a spritz, right? If the dog is really uncomfortable and won't let me touch that skin, I'm going to make a spritz out of those oils with maybe a little vitamin E, little witch hazel, little coconut oil, and get that on the body often throughout the day. If I need to soak their feet, I'll do an Epsom salt soak with those same essential oils. Sometimes I'll do a green tea soak, right? And make a little bath, get green tea and all those essential oils, and I'll just take a cloth and start squeezing it over the body or soak their feet in it while I squeeze across the body and allow that body to start taking in those calming, skin soothing elements and really start to feel better. And you can do that daily to help your dog feel better while he heals from the inside out.
So I think one of the questions people will have is like, how much are you spritzing on there? Do you have to like soak them down, or how do
Yeah.
you apply how does the oil go through like a dog that has a heavy coat or something like that, and you're just spritzing it on there? How is it actually
So,
absorbing and get to where it needs to help?
so depending on the size of the dog or how much of an area we need to spritz will sort of dictate how much of a recipe I'm creating. But your dog's fur acts as a wick. And so if we make a couple of spritzes on a fur in an area in which is irritated, that fur is going to wick that oil down into the skin quickly. And frankly, your dog will absorb more oil than you would because of that wicking action.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take much. If we're going to make an ointment, like let's say the skin is super dry, right? So when I have a red, hot, itchy spot that's really inflamed and raw and uncomfortable, I move into those spritzes and soaks. If it's a dry patch, I tend to move into the ointments with like a coconut oil, and then I layer in my other oils on top of that. And then, like we talked about earlier, the coconut oil will keep those oils on the surface of the skin longer because now the essential oil molecules have to fight the size of the coconut oil molecules to get through that layer.
Yeah, and so when you're the other thing is, obviously there's a lot of, again, different types of skin conditions, but yeah, if you're working with an area, spritzing it is good. But there have been times where I have created some kind of chose my oils based on my dog's conditions, and give them a bath or whatever, and then just kind of use it to kind of just make like a gallon of water and put in maybe 20 drops or something and kind of shake it, and then kind of give it a pour over, or like a partial pour over, just to help them from a perspective of just trying to get those oils on, because like you said, now when you're applying oils, there are different ways. How would you determine whether you're going to utilize what they would consider a neat oil versus adding, or would you recommend always having some kind of a carrier oil as well?
I would say it depends on the dog, depends on the issue that we're dealing with. When we're talking again about these red hot raw skins, going neat, a copaiba, a lavender, frankincense, um, even like a chamomile essential oil, they're going to be very gentle, but you probably don't need a whole drop of any one of those or all of those. So even if you did a dilution in like a cheap vodka or a witch hazel that's going to dry off pretty quickly, that's okay. So dilution, again, it doesn't take very much. And my choice, excuse me, about whether I'm going to use an ointment or a spritz determines on the wetness of the skin I'm dealing with. But I will always consider an Epsom salt soak for any of those issues.
Yeah. And so let's talk about those specific oils that you have chosen. So you
Mhm.
said you would use like lavender. Maybe a lot of people might not know what copaiba is, and why would you select that particular oil?
Yeah, great question. So go look up beta caryophyllene and understand.
Tell me about it.
Go look it up. I can't medicinally tell you its
Oh,
benefit,
gotcha,
but
gotcha.
go look it up and understand the benefit that it will bring to help calm and soothe and reduce inflammation in the body. And it is very powerful. And so, again, if we are, whether we're blending, making a little, what I call a concoction of oils in the same bottle or the same ointment, or we're starting to layer them, that copaiba is going to add a soothing like no other oil can.
One of the things I heard about copaiba was it also magnifies other oils in their medicinal qualities. I don't know if that's a bit, but
Yeah,
I've heard
so
that.
that's something that some people started to say a number of years ago, and it's sort of been misinterpreted. You will also hear it called a driver oil, which says it makes it penetrate
Yeah, I don't know.
further,
That would be, yeah,
all that kind of stuff.
peppermint.
That's not really what we're about. It's again, look up the constituent beta caryophyllene, and you will see why this is such an important oil to use anytime we have inflammation in the body. The other oil I'll bring, I mean, obviously frankincense. You can't go wrong with lavender and frankincense, right? You just can't go wrong with them. But a lot of people's hair may have perked up on the back of their neck when I mentioned tea tree, because we hear that quite commonly as the oil of fear, right? Oh my God, tea tree is going to kill all the cats and kill all the dogs, and it's right. So I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago when there was a big drama, and you'll still see it fly around. In fact, it's about time. I think it's January every year that spins back up. Um, Tea tree is one of the most adulterated oils on the planet. And what does that mean? It means it's synthetic, right? Just like we talked about, they were producing more lavender than they were selling more lavender in bottles than the fields could actually produce. So something synthetic somewhere is happening. And that's happening with tea tree essential oil also. And it's an oil that's high in phenols. And so remember I said we could get into that chemistry lesson and go in and talk about the cleansing effects of something. When we have a high quality oil in a good level of dilution for a short term use, for a purpose like a period of time to heal a skin condition like this, then it's fine. It's not going to create the drama that most people think when they hear these scare tactics from the interwebs.
Yeah. And so, overall, for dogs that have either like an allergy and or again any kind of skin condition, I think a lot of people go out, as I mentioned, to try and find some, quality, some essential oils because that's really what they they think of not really realizing that there are different qualities, just like anything. You buy a car that's at your very basic, or you can buy a car that has all the bells and whistles on it, and the bells and whistles, even though it costs more and it has more features, generally they're also made, the quality is more than just a basic model, I guess, is where I'm going with that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So places that people would go and find these type of oils, again, there are some manufacturers that are out there, that are kind of known, for their quality oils. There's always like these, battles and stuff like that. But one of the things that I tend to look for, and it doesn't always necessarily guarantee quality wise, but more so, based on like organics. If they're like a wildflower and or organic, then at least that the quality of the plant was well, and then hopefully the processing, because I think it's not just the plant, but also how that plant has been processed,
Well,
for the
I
oil
think
based
you
on
have
those
to be
qualities.
careful with that too, because something can be called organic and still not be safely distilled, harvested, bottled. It could have had something organic in it to start with and then become something else by the time it was bottled. The company that I use, because because there are fields and essential oil plant materials from around the world, the organic definition is not quite the same as it would be from US organics,
Is
right?
there like third party testing like they do for hemp oils and stuff like
Yeah.
that? So there would be like a third party testing that you can,
Yes.
always look at different. So those are questions when you're buying an oil, where is the oil from? Who the manufacturer is, how has it been manufactured? Is there a third party testing to make sure that
Mhm.
there are no contaminants in there, or things that are cutting the oils, that they're using to,
Right.
kind of create. So those are kind of ways to, find a quality oil,
Yeah,
at least
and
the questions
I'm
to
a
ask.
little I'm a little impartial, maybe not impartial. That I think you need a really good educator, right? People are scared sometimes to use essential oils with dogs. I know I was. When I started using some emotional oils, because that's where I started, right? Is how do I help release some of these emotional anxieties and things of that nature? And so when I started talking about actually using the essential oils on the dog or on myself or in the body, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Do I really trust this whole thing? And it wasn't until I found some really excellent people who understand using essential oils with animals that my confidence started to grow, and I could learn more about that. And then I was in hook, line, and sinker. So I know not
Right.
everybody wants that. What I find with my clients is they have a problem, they want it solved, period.
Right.
And then they want to know what they can do as their dog ages to eliminate toxins, to keep them healthy, to deal with the next thing that may come up. Excuse me. And that's where an educator who you have on speed dial can say, "Oh yeah, I know you've got a little bottle of tea tree in your little bag of tricks. Go get it out and let's use it for this thing too." Because they all have a lot of different um, multi-purpose topics.
Right. And I think you kind of touched on a good point with, thinking that, having somebody to help guide you through, maybe, choosing oils and things of that. Because the reality is there are so many really good qualities. You've named a few of them, but there are so many other, oils that can also be used.
Oh, 100%.
But then there are probably oils that you wouldn't necessarily recommend, for
You
when
mean
we're looking at
brand?
from a skin conditions and
Exactly.
things.
So we're not going to put lemon on red hot itchy skin. we're not going to put peppermint on,
Peppermint.
right?
Yeah.
The dog's going to be like, woo, that's too much.
Right.
Right. Right. And so we're not going to put things like clove on those topics. They have their purpose, many uses for different essential oils, but when we're in the category of skin, we need to be gentle and soothing and healing, not in this cleansing tea tree, yes, but the level of cleansing that a lemon would do is like, oh my Lord. I mean, it takes goo off of label bottles, right? We don't want that
Right.
on our skin when it's inflamed.
When you have the little sticky things on your, you got to get the lemon juice, scrape it off, any of those citrus, orange and stuff like that.
We don't want to put that on skin that's on fire already, right?
Right.
The dog would be like, no, thank you. I don't love this.
Yeah. And so we did have a question that popped up about asking about different types of companies as far as that have these oils. They mention the two kind of main oils I think that are out there, which are from Young Living and doTERRA. As far as oils, again, I think the best bet is to do your research, ask the questions, and go out there and, maybe, I think both of those companies probably have some kind of education that they do with the people who purchase their oils and things of that nature.
And that's an important thing, right? Most of the education happens once you are with an educator, right? Once you are with somebody who is helping you learn, because like I said, we can't diagnose, treat, or cure anything. But if I can sit with somebody and talk to them about my experiences in a different way than I could do in a public, where somebody could run off and take information completely out of context, then those educators, those company educational things are so important to have access to. So those are probably the top two. I made a decision, and I won't share it here, but I compared 7 different companies when I was choosing the brand that I was going to go with, and have very specific reasons for why I chose what I did. And I'm happy to talk to anybody about that one-on-one, but I don't think this is the place for that conversation.
Yeah, I agree. So just to kind of recap, so basically, choosing an oil and just realizing that the majority of the oils that are out there are based on fragrant oils, that they just smell pretty. But if you're utilizing an oil to be more effective, that is supposedly more medicinal, based on how they process that and how they extract the oils so that they can get the constituents that are, I always look at things just like I look at food. Food is medicine. And so when you're pulling from the plant and you're utilizing the oils from the plant, that those are also going to be somewhat, again, kind of that food is medicine.
Yeah. And can I just add, I don't want anybody using any essential oil as a fragrance, because it's synthetic. And your dog's body and your own is going to absorb that synthetic, and the liver is going to have to deal with it. And that's how we often wind up in trouble in the first place, is the liver moves into a crisis and says, I can't do this anymore. And what happens? The skin inflames, right?
Exactly.
So no plug-ins, no cheap adulterated quote unquote essential oils. They are unsafe for you and your pet, but your dog will be at greater risk because he's a smaller body running around naked and barefooted and picking up whatever's landing on the furniture, the floor, the fabric, and so on.
Exactly. And so again, to reiterate, dogs that do have skin conditions are primarily due to something that's going on internally generally and is pushing outside of the body, creating these symptoms, scratching and biting and chewing and itching and hot spots and dermatitis, you get ear infections and all those particular things. So as you mentioned earlier, you can it's not just about applying essential oils and trying to help the dog from that, but it's more of a full perspective. So it's a perspective of from a health orientated, making sure that your environment is clean, making sure that the food that you're feeding is clean and wholesome. Primarily when you see skin issues, it usually is, some sort of an allergy or something of that nature that is causing these symptoms for the dog. So just spraying oils on isn't necessarily going to, I think it's one of the things that people do is they always think, I'm just going to buy a product and put the product on and it's going to fix it. When it's a reoccurring issue.
Food first, always.
Yeah.
Essential oils, safer products, including shampoo, right? Many groomers are using products that if you go look them up, and I encourage everybody with a dog that gets groomed to ask your groomer what product they use, look up the ingredients, and understand what they are. Many of them are skin irritants, cancer-causing agents, and no disrespect to the groomers out there, but they're trying to save money where they can, right? And so the quality of the product they're using is just not always optimal.
Right.
So take your shampoo with you. I mean,
right. Yeah, buy what you can.
Yeah.
So anyways, for those of you who don't know who I am, we've been sitting here talking with Dana from A Well-Oiled Canine. My name is Christine. I am a food specialist with A Naturally Balanced Dog. And if you visit my website at naturallybalanceddog.com, then you will find that we offer hundreds of recipes that you can make from your home. That are naturally balanced and complete. We also offer environmental and food intolerance and sensitivity testing that includes nutritional and heavy metal panels. So if you do have a dog that is having skin issues or allergies, then visiting our website will probably be a great benefit for you to just kind of check out. With that being said, next week, I just want to kind of mention next week, we have, I have Michelle Allen coming from Monkey's House Hospice Sanctuary, which I'm really excited to talk about. We're going to be talking about nutrition for senior dogs and supportive supplements. And so come back next week, 5:45 on Wednesdays. And that's what we'll be talking to next week. But I'd like to thank you, Dana, for joining me today. There's a lot of great information. Hopefully people will be able to at least kind of go away with some thoughts of how to select oils, maybe some of those oils that you mentioned using the lavender, the copaiba, and frankincense, chamomile, that those might be some oils that they can utilize to help calm skin irritation.
And if anybody's looking to get started with oils, has questions, feel free to go to my website. The inquiry with me is free for your initial check-in to find out if I think they can help you in the first place. And so would love to chat with people as needed.
Great.
But
beautiful.
It was fun. I enjoyed
Thank you.
it.
All right, guys, everybody. We'll see you all next week. Thank you.